So there's this cannibalism practice. The siege is getting worse. And to my reconciliation of what we talked before, even though there were like 2,700,000 at least people mentioned without, like I said, children and women and some women. The recorded number by Josephus, unless I'm wrong, was like 1.1 million people that were dead during the siege, which caused, at least according to Josephus, an unnatural high level of blood. Can we speak about the recorded height of blood and how is that portraying biblical narrative?
Sure. So people were dying, obviously, of starvation. People were being murdered for the food they had. And then you had people dying from the battles they were fighting, either the factions in Jerusalem fighting each other or the fighting against the Romans. So for a long time, they were throwing bodies over the wall into a riverbank that was outside the wall. They literally just threw them over the edge. They couldn't carry them out. At a certain point, there were so many bodies that the river itself had run with blood, and there were pools and puddles of blood everywhere. Um, Titus, Roman Caesar Titus, came riding around the city doing reconnaissance and came upon this. And he was so disgusted by it because it's just putrefaction. It's decomposing bodies. It smells like death. And there's so much blood everywhere. And this correlates to scriptures talking about that the blood would be up to the horse's bridle. And in fact, Josephus himself records that this was the level of the blood. And he would not have, because he wasn't a Christian, he wouldn't have been writing these words to validate Christianity or to, he would have unwittingly been writing this. He wouldn't have thought about any prophetic connection to it. So, and Titus at that point invoked God and looked up to heaven and called upon God to witness that he himself had not done this and that he did not want this for anyone. So he was both angry and sad about this event. We also have within the city so many dead bodies that once the wall was no longer an option, because basically you would have piled them so high that you would have built a ramp made of bodies that people could have used to come over the wall. So that stopped being an option. So they had to put the bodies somewhere, and they didn't have time to dig graves. So what they would do was take the houses, the big houses, and the larger buildings, and pile bodies within these buildings. And then towards the end of the war, or at least the war of that city, you had bodies everywhere, where you couldn't even walk without seeing a dead body. So we have, biblical descriptions of this and how the blood would be up to the horse's bridle, that it would be in, and I'm spacing out the name, but in a particular valley where this battle would occur. We have people from every nation here. So when we say Romans, we're talking about a very vast empire that went from Europe all the way out to the east, beyond the Middle East. So we have Arabians, at that point they weren't Saudi Arabians, they were just Arabians. And we have the Idumeans. We had Idumeans that fought with the Zealots, and we had Idumeans who fought with Rome. We had Turks, but at that point they would have been called Macedonians, and would have been related to the Greeks. And then we also, of course, had Greeks, and we had Italians, we had all sorts of nations coming together. And that's uh, part of the prophecy as well, where you have the nations coming, all the nations of the earth coming to stand against the holy people. Um, now, again, this is this is hyperbole, the language. It's basically like when Paul said, "I've preached the gospel to the whole world." Well, it's the known world, yeah, or the world they knew for sure. He had done so. But he was speaking of the Roman world, the world that was, in fact, already conquered by Rome. But yet they knew there were other Germanic tribes up north that weren't part of Rome. There were other peoples, Scythians and barbarians who weren't part of Rome. So Paul was using hyperbole. Paul knew there were these other people, but he was, it's within context to his saying. So you have these prophecies that say all the nations of the earth. Well, Rome represented all the Gentiles. It represented all the nations of the earth. And it's disputable. I mean, you can debate that, and people can say, "Well, no, I don't believe that fulfilled prophecy," and for other reasons. But the details of these prophecies are fairly specific.